Hey guys, tonight we're stepping barefoot into the cool, silvery sands of ancient Egypt, guided only by moonlight and the scent of something unexpectedly crisp. You're in a sacred garden, its low walls casting soft shadows as your fingertips brush the leathery edges of a strange plant, not roses, not papyrus, but tall, upright stalks of lettuce. Yes, lettuce. Long before it made its way into your fridge drawer or onto an uninspired burger, lettuce had a different role here, one you probably won't survive this video without raising an eyebrow at. The Egyptians didn't just eat it, they worshipped it, rubbed it on stuff, and even paraded it around like a royal guest at a wedding where nobody wanted to talk about what lettuce actually meant. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time, I love knowing where, and when, you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk slowly, carefully, the garden under your bare feet both silent and oddly alive. The lettuce, tall, proud, with long, milk-bleeding stalks, almost seems to lean toward you as you pass, like it knows a secret. A very personal secret. It's night, and the stars are spattered across the sky in familiar Egyptian constellations, maybe a jackal or an ibis. Somewhere, water gurgles gently from a canal that snakes through the garden rows. This isn't just some Nile-side farm. You're in a sacred precinct, a place where priests have whispered invocations and women have walked in procession, scattering petals over vegetables with names too sacred to say out loud in the wrong tone. Lettuce here is not a side dish. It's a symbol, of life, of vigor, of a certain kind of stamina that goes unspoken in polite company. Its upright form isn't a coincidence, and its white sap. Well, let's just say they weren't blind to metaphors in ancient Egypt. You reach out and pluck a leaf. It's bitter, almost metallic on your tongue, and you can't help but grimace. Definitely not Caesar salad material. But as you chew, your vision flickers, not from poison, but from history. You see priests in white linen robes, heads shaved, fingers sticky with sap as they prepare lettuce offerings for the god Min. You'll meet him soon. You won't forget him. Historians still argue whether this lettuce was the same crisp head we know today or a more ancient, lanky cousin. Some say it was Lactuca cereola, a wilder, spikier ancestor of romaine, known for its bitter taste and sticky, milky fluid. Others think multiple varieties grew in sacred gardens, each with their own spicy symbolism. But whatever the strain, its symbolism was clear: upright growth, potent sap, and a very specific connection to human reproduction. Subtle? Not even close. You step deeper into the garden, and the plants close around you like an audience, tall and breathless. In the distance, a flicker of torchlight, someone still tending the sacred lettuce, even in the dead of night. They move slowly, reverently, as though waking the leaves might summon something they're not ready to deal with. Lettuce, here, is an invitation to the divine, a vegetable-shaped wink to the gods of fertility and virility. A sleepy beetle crawls across your hand, drawn perhaps by the scent of crushed leaf and ancient magic. Or maybe it just thinks you're one of the caretakers now, part of the cult of lettuce, accidental initiate of something deeply weird. The air is thick with the earthy smell of Nile silt, fermented compost, and crushed herbs. It's not unpleasant, just strong, like a message from the past you can't quite decipher. You notice that some of the lettuce has been recently harvested, their stalks cleanly cut and sap still oozing in the moonlight. Where did they take them? To a temple? To someone's bedchamber? To a waiting priestess preparing an ointment or a fertility potion? The possibilities are endless, and oddly leafy. And here's where the jokes write themselves. A romantic superfood. A salad seducer. It almost sounds like the marketing team at Whole Foods got really into hieroglyphs and incense. But no, this was serious business. Whole rituals centered around this unassuming vegetable. Priests performed rites to ensure it grew tall and strong. Women consumed it to encourage conception. And offerings were made in temples not with gold, but with baskets of lettuce held aloft like sacred relics. You begin to feel the garden pulse around you with the energy of old myths, half-remembered chants, and buried desires. Insects hum their chorus, and somewhere, a desert fox barks once and falls silent again. The lettuce stands tall, indifferent to your presence but soaked in meaning all the same. You're not here to pick it. You're here to understand why they thought it could bring love, or at least, passion, with a single bite. In the far corner of the garden, a small altar looms, more like a stone table, mossed and cracked. On it lie offerings, dried herbs, a carved amulet, and a wilted stalk of lettuce carefully wrapped in linen. You lean closer. The linen smells faintly of perfume, sweat, and something earthy, primal. Someone came here recently, someone hoping for favor, or maybe just a little help in the love department. Historians still debate whether the average Egyptian really believed in the romantic powers of lettuce or whether it was more of a priestly performance, ritual without belief, symbolism without sincerity. But the offerings say something else. They say someone, somewhere, hoped the lettuce worked. Hoped it could ignite something more than dinner conversation. Hoped it could bring a child, or a dream, or just one unforgettable night. The stars begin to shift overhead, and you realize you've been standing there for quite a while. The air has cooled, the garden quieted, but the lettuce, proud, upright, ancient, remains unchanged. You're beginning to understand. This isn't just a story about plants. It's a story about belief. About bodies. About the things we hope for, when we don't quite know what else to try. You walk away from the garden altar and feel the dirt cool between your toes. There's a faint drumbeat in the distance, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat made from hollowed-out wood. You follow the sound through a winding path of sandstone and night air until you reach a low temple nestled against the edge of the desert. Torches burn low along the entrance, casting flickering shadows that dance across worn hieroglyphs, stories carved in limestone, long before forks were invented, long before lettuce was downgraded to sandwich filler. Inside, it's cool and close. The air smells of incense, frankincense, maybe, or something spicier. You step inside, and there he is, Min. The god of fertility. Guardian of crops, masculine energy, and, most curiously, the official patron of lettuce. He stands tall in the shadows, carved in gleaming alabaster, arm raised in greeting or command. And, well, his other arm, let's say it's permanently enthusiastic. Yes, Min is always depicted in full divine readiness, and no, it's not a metaphor. The ancient Egyptians were many things, but subtle about this particular god. Not one of them. Min doesn't just hold symbols, he is the symbol. In one hand, he clutches a long stalk of lettuce, angled upright and proud, a vegetal exclamation point. The ancient depictions often pair him with ritual lettuce bunches, as if the plant itself had divine authority. This wasn't just a decorative touch. It was central to his identity, his rites, and his festivals. If lettuce had a fan club, Min was the president, spiritual advisor, and shirtless calendar model. You feel the temple's stone beneath your fingertips, worn smooth by generations of worshippers. The walls are etched with images of processions, priests carrying lettuce stalks like sacred torches, women in elaborate wigs singing songs in his name, and pharaohs bowing low before shrines where leafy greens stood on offering tables like awkward bouquets from someone trying too hard. Mainstream history tells you that Min's worship dates back to the pre-dynastic period, long before the pyramids. He was especially revered in places like Coptos and Akhmim, cities you've probably never heard of unless you've gotten lost in a National Geographic rabbit hole. And while other gods were linked to justice or war or the stars, Min was all about productivity. In all forms. Agricultural, biological, romantic, you name it. Lettuce was his favorite prop, not because it looked good in a salad spinner, but because of its anatomical suggestions and its ability to stand tall through an entire ritual without wilting. Historians still argue whether the lettuce used in Min's rites was symbolic of male virility only, or whether it also played a role in women's fertility rites. Some texts suggest that women made offerings of lettuce to increase chances of conception, while others focus on its connection to male stamina. Either way, you're standing in a temple where leafy greens were taken more seriously than most modern relationships. The rituals themselves were, how do we say, vigorous. Festivals of men were known for athletic competitions, public displays of strength, and even ceremonial erections of lettuce stalks by temple acolytes. You try not to imagine a group of solemn priests lifting lettuce like a championship trophy, but there it is, carved right into the wall. You can almost hear it now, music, drums, chanting. You've slipped into the memory of one of men's sacred days. The air is thick with sweat and heat. Priests pour libations over lettuce plants planted in clay jars. Young men race through the temple grounds, their bodies painted with ochre, competing for the favor of the god. The winner doesn't just get a wreath. He gets to stand before Min's statue and raise a lettuce stalk toward the sky, part victory, part vow, part awkward symbolism. A woman walks past you now, her arms full of lettuce leaves wrapped in linen. She hums a tune that's older than the Nile itself. She pauses, lays the leaves gently at Min's feet, and whispers something, maybe a prayer, maybe a wish. Her eyes are closed, and her lips move like someone remembering how to ask for something you're not sure you deserve. You wonder if it's love she wants. Or strength. Or a child. As she leaves, you stay behind, looking at the statue, the lettuce, the ritual tools scattered nearby. There's a bowl filled with oil, possibly scented with blue lotus. A small bronze blade, used not for violence, but for harvesting the sacred plant. A fan made of ostrich feathers, lying forgotten in the corner, still twitching in the breeze like a sleeping bird. A fringe theory, one usually delivered with a raised eyebrow, suggests that Min's lettuce wasn't eaten but used topically. As in, rubbed on the body as part of fertility rituals. There's very little evidence for this, but the idea has floated around dusty museum basements and fringe archaeology blogs like a stubborn piece of lettuce in your teeth. Maybe it happened. Maybe it didn't. But it sounds like something ancient Egyptians might try if they were really desperate for a cosmic boost. You sit at the edge of the altar and breathe in the heavy silence. Somewhere, a scarab scuttles across the floor, clicking its way over tiny bits of dried leaf and ash. The air is thick with memory and meaning, and you realize, again, that lettuce wasn't just a garnish in this world. It was a messenger. A bridge between the mundane and the mystical. A very crunchy kind of prayer. The drumbeat fades. The walls grow still. Min watches you with that eternal, unblinking stare, leaf in hand, hips forward, utterly unapologetic. You nod, as if to say, yes, I get it now. The lettuce mattered. And so did the belief behind it. The temple doors sigh shut behind you, and the night opens back up like a scroll. You walk along a narrow path lined with worn stones, sand filtering into the cracks. The stars overhead seem impossibly bright, unfiltered by modern light or logic. Off to the side, nestled behind low mud brick walls, you spot another curious little garden, not grand like the first, but private, enclosed, almost secret. Someone's home. A noblewoman, perhaps. Or a scribe. And just like in the sacred precinct, lettuce grows here too. But this time, it isn't about gods. It's about daily life. And the lines between the spiritual and the everyday are as blurred as the horizon in a heat shimmer. You duck into the courtyard. It's cool, shaded by a woven reed awning, with ceramic pots lined neatly along the walls. Herbs, flowers, and in one corner, more lettuce. It seems to be everywhere. A simple plant with complicated significance. You can imagine a servant kneeling there earlier that morning, trimming the leaves with care, wiping sap from their fingers like it was normal, which, in their world, it absolutely was. Here in the private sphere, lettuce wasn't just for altars. It showed up on tables, in ointments, and maybe even in pillow talk. A nobleman might send a bundle of it as a cheeky gift. For your garden, he says, but everyone knows what he means. Lettuce, like language, is all about context. A mainstream fact, Egyptians regularly consumed lettuce not only for its alleged aphrodisiac qualities, but also as part of meals. Drawings in tombs show stalks on plates, next to fish and bread and wine. It was hearty, bitter, and packed with fluid, refreshing in desert heat, or so they believed. But it wasn't just about nutrients. Food and medicine blurred in ancient Egypt. A plant that kept you strong in bed and hydrated? That's a win-win, especially if you're trying to impress both a lover and the gods. You notice a clay tablet on a wooden bench nearby, inscribed with a list. It's a domestic inventory: grain, oil, garlic, lettuce. The ancient grocery list, casually acknowledging its importance. You run your fingers over the etched characters. This was no exotic delicacy, it was normal, expected, part of the rhythm of a well-stocked home. A romantic superfood not just in rituals, but in recipes. And honestly, what's more Egyptian than turning a vegetable into both a prayer and a pantry item? A fringe tidbit floats into your mind. Some scholars have proposed that lettuce was used to cool the blood, which in Egyptian medicine meant reducing fevers, calming lust, or balancing the body's heat. Yes, lettuce might have been used to both inflame passion and soothe it, depending on the preparation. Kind of like how coffee both wakes you up and, somehow, gives you anxiety. Ancient health logic wasn't always linear. They worked more in circles. Circles with lettuce in the middle. Someone else walks into the courtyard, a young girl carrying a small jar. She opens it, dips her fingers in, and spreads something thick and greenish over her wrists. A homemade remedy? Maybe a cosmetic? Historians still argue whether the sap of wild lettuce was used medicinally or magically, or both. Ancient texts mention dream leaf, a cousin of lettuce used to induce sleep or visions. Was it this lettuce? Or another? The debate carries on, echoing through scrolls, lectures, and sleepless museum curators. The girl smiles at you like she knows a secret and disappears behind a doorway. You follow the lingering scent, sharp, earthy, faintly bitter, and it pulls you toward a low table set for a meal. You sit. Why not? The past is generous that way. Bread, soft and cracked from the oven. A smear of fig jam. And yes, a bowl of steamed greens with, lettuce. Wilted, seasoned, still slightly crunchy. They ate it cooked too. It wasn't always about the crunch, it was about the essence. The juice. The message. You chew slowly, and the taste is sharper than expected, metallic again, like blood or wild dandelions. The texture sticks to your teeth, not unpleasantly. Someone next to you chuckles softly and says something in a language you don't understand. But the tone is friendly, amused, like, takes getting used to, right? You nod. Because yes. It does. Above the table hangs a small carving, min again, less elaborate this time. A personal altar. Reverent, but casual. A wink, perhaps. Or just a daily reminder, life thrives when you feed it well. Feed it lettuce. Feed it faith. Feed it something that makes your pulse a little faster. Your host, a man with lined eyes and ink-stained fingers, begins telling a story. You can't understand every word, but you catch the shape of it: a man, a woman, a night in the fields, and a stalk of lettuce that stood a little too tall under the moonlight. There's laughter. A raised eyebrow. The moral is unclear, but the lettuce survives. You glance around the room, simple, clean, but deeply layered with belief. In this home, lettuce is food, yes. But it's also memory. Medicine. A nudge from the gods. You begin to realize that in ancient Egypt, vegetables had reputations. Garlic was strength. Onions were protection. Lettuce? Lettuce was longing. Outside, the sun has begun to rise, its first light catching the edge of the horizon like fire on copper. Birds call. A donkey brays in the distance. You step back into the courtyard, and the lettuce glows in the early light, tall, alert, a little smug. It knows what it is. And you do now, too. You take one last look at the garden, the home, the tablet on the bench, and the bowl on the table. You breathe in, slowly, letting the scent of morning and myth settle in your chest. Then you turn, and follow the path toward the temple fields again. There's more to see. More to understand. More lettuce, always. You follow the morning light down a narrow dirt road, flanked by fields where low figures stoop over crops. The Nile stretches out behind them, wide and glassy, catching the sun in ripples. It's early yet, still cool, but you can already feel the day brewing in the soil, warm and expectant. A heron lifts off from the riverbank, wings slow and measured, like it's gliding through honey. Up ahead, you spot something that makes you slow your steps, a festival tent, half erected, striped with faded red and ochre fabric. People are bustling around, lugging baskets of food, stringing garlands, prepping the makeshift altar. And at the center of all this? Yep. Lettuce. Piles and piles of it, stacked like wedding cakes, displayed like trophies. Clearly, this isn't just dinner prep. It's something bigger. Louder. Stranger. You've arrived during the Feast of the Valley, a springtime festival where the dead are honored and the living get just a little bit wild. Think of it as Mardi Gras meets Memorial Day, with a hefty dash of divine fertility rites. Whole families travel to the west bank of the Nile to picnic atop the tombs of their ancestors, drink fermented barley beer, and, because of course, offer up lettuce to Min and friends. Mainstream historians agree that during these festivals, fertility deities took center stage, with lettuce often front and center in processions. It was a time to renew both the land and the body. Priests would carry tall lettuce stalks in parades, followed by dancers, musicians, and hopeful couples. Some people painted their doors green. Others whispered prayers to statues, hoping for babies, good harvests, or, let's be honest, a little more stamina where it counts. You drift toward the preparations, invisible to the workers but fully immersed in the atmosphere. Someone is grinding spices with a stone mortar. Another person weaves lettuce leaves into a garland, her fingers moving in that ancient, rhythmic way that only comes from repetition passed down through generations. Children chase each other between tables, one with a lettuce stalk like a sword. You chuckle under your breath. It's all so earthy, so chaotic, so human. But it's not all fun and lettuce games. You notice a priest standing near the altar, face calm but focused. In his hands, he holds a clay jar filled with what looks like a thick green paste. He murmurs over it in a language so old it sounds like wind through reeds. Then, with deliberate care, he smears a bit onto a stone idol. A fertility spell. A blessing. Historians still argue whether these festival rituals were more about honoring the dead or invigorating the living. Maybe both. The Egyptians were multitaskers that way. You find a shady spot near a fig tree and watch as a young couple approaches the altar together. They're holding hands, visibly nervous, dressed in their best linen robes. The woman carries a small bowl filled with offerings, dates, lotus petals, and a small head of lettuce polished to a shine. She sets it down gently, and the priest nods in approval. Then he says something low and short, maybe a blessing, maybe a joke. The couple laughs awkwardly, bows, and walks away holding hands a little tighter. A quirky fringe belief drifts into your mind. Some scholars think lettuce offerings at these festivals weren't just about fertility, they were matchmaking tools. Presenting lettuce together might have signaled a shared desire to conceive, or just to be seen as a unit. Sort of like updating your relationship status on ancient Facebook, if Facebook was a clay tablet and you couldn't delete posts. You let your gaze drift upward, where a woman balances a woven tray of lettuce on her head. The stalks are impossibly straight, leaves carefully trimmed, almost ornamental. The whole display is held together with strips of papyrus like a green crown. She moves through the crowd like a priestess of produce, solemn and slow. When she reaches the altar, She bows low and leaves the tray beside the others, lettuce upon lettuce, building into a kind of edible pyramid. You reach out and touch one of the outer leaves. It's cool, slick with morning dew, and still faintly pulsing with life. Lettuce wasn't cut too far in advance during these festivals. It had to be fresh, alive, technically. A living symbol of what was being prayed for: life, growth, continuation. The Egyptians didn't deal in metaphors that wilted. If they were going to use a plant to summon love or fertility, it had better be photogenic and perky. The music starts now, flutes, lyres, hand drums, and the crowd begins to sway. Children hoot. A few dancers step into a cleared space near the altar, swaying and spinning, their garments flaring like petals. One holds a lettuce stalk and waves it above their head like a banner. And just like that, a cheer erupts. Everyone claps. Someone passes you a cup of something sweet and boozy, and even though it's imaginary, it warms your throat. Suddenly, you're deep in it, part of the crowd, surrounded by motion and joy. No longer watching from the sidelines. This is the kind of moment that doesn't get carved into temple walls. This is the lettuce of real life, soaked in sweat and laughter and perfume. It's romantic in the messy, honest sense of the word. As you sway with the music, you catch a flash of green from a necklace, someone's amulet, shaped like a tiny lettuce stalk in faience. Not expensive, but clearly precious. A lucky charm. A symbol of youthful energy. Or maybe just an inside joke with the gods. You wonder how many people wore these to bed, hoping for dreams filled with love, or something more active. The sky deepens as the day lengthens. The sun hangs heavier, and the shadows stretch out like cats across the earth. But the celebration doesn't slow. Someone tosses you a lettuce leaf, crispy, a little curled at the edges, and you catch it without thinking. It flutters in your hand like a green feather. A benediction. A dare. And as the drums pick up speed and the dancers leap higher, you realize, this was never just a festival. It was a spell. A performance. A way of whispering to the universe, we're here. We love. We hope. And we brought lettuce. The music echoes in your ears as you slip away from the festivities, the drum beats fading into the hush of the fields. The air is thicker now, the heat of the day pressing down like a warm hand on your back. You wander along an irrigation canal, its waters sluggish and green, carrying the scent of Nile silt and flowering reeds. Birds hop between stalks. Somewhere in the distance, an ox grunts. You're heading toward a farm, not a palace garden or a temple plot, but an everyday lettuce patch. This is where the magic gets muddy, where romance is grown with dirt under fingernails and knees sore from squatting. Because no matter how sacred or seductive a plant becomes, someone still has to grow it. And that someone is probably sunburned, underpaid, and wondering how long until lunch. The field stretches ahead, organized in neat, squared rows. Low dikes divide the soil into geometric beds, water trickling gently between them. You crouch beside one, running your fingers over the ridged earth. The lettuce here isn't statuesque like in the temple, it's younger, fresher, squat little clusters of green just starting to stretch upward. You hear a voice mutter from behind you, and you turn to see an old man tugging at a weed, muttering something about lazy river gods and spoiled roots. Mainstream historians confirm that ancient Egyptian agriculture was impressively sophisticated. Farmers managed their fields with canals, sluices, and hand tools, timing their work with the flood cycle of the Nile. Lettuce, in particular, required careful attention. It liked moisture but not too much. It liked sun but wilted easily. It was both prized and picky, like a diva that only performs under perfect lighting. The farmer gestures toward a sack of manure, and you realize quickly, not everything about ancient romance smells sweet. Lettuce thrived on fertilizer, and that fertilizer often came from animals. Sometimes even people. Human waste was occasionally used as compost, and while the Egyptians were fastidious about hygiene, they were also pragmatic. You wrinkle your nose. The things we do for love. He smiles a little at your expression and continues working, his hands moving in a rhythm that predates language. Pull, scrape, pat, water. He talks to the plants, not expecting them to talk back. Maybe that's part of the process, a low chant to keep the spirits interested. Or maybe he's just bored. You step over a furrow and nearly trip on a lumpy clay tablet half buried in the dirt. You brush it off, there's a simple sketch on it. A man, a woman, and between them, a lettuce plant. It's crudely drawn but unmistakable. A love note? A marriage symbol? Historians still argue whether farm symbols were literal or metaphorical. This could be documentation, or doodling. But either way, someone thought this little crop was worth carving. A fringe belief swirls up from the dust. Some ancient texts suggest that lettuce was linked to the underworld. Its milky sap, oozing out when the stalk was cut, was seen as both a life-giving fluid and a death omen. Dual meanings weren't contradictions, they were complements. After all, fertility and mortality were two sides of the same linen-wrapped coin in ancient Egypt. You follow the farmer to a shaded lean-to where his tools hang in neat rows. He wipes his hands on his tunic and offers you a hunk of bread. There's a dish of pickled radish and, yes, a handful of raw lettuce leaves. You chew slowly, ignoring the bitterness, focusing instead on the texture, firm, crisp, cooling against the roof of your mouth. He nods approvingly. You glance around and notice a small shrine tucked in the corner. Just a flat stone, really, with a few wilted leaves placed carefully atop it. A tiny statue of Min leans in the shade, grinning his eternal grin. The farmer has made his own little altar here, private and modest. He places a fresh stalk beside the others and murmurs something under his breath, maybe a thank you, maybe a request. This is lettuce as a daily offering. Not grand. Not theatrical. Just a habit. A ritual like tying your shoes or lighting a candle. Something to do with your hands while your heart tries to ask for what it really wants. Back in the field, a group of children runs between the rows, laughing and kicking up dust. One of them pauses to pick a lettuce leaf and plops it onto another's head like a crown. They shriek, fall over, and the whole game resets. You remember the garlands from the festival, the parade, the chants. Now here it is again, in miniature, no less sacred. Lettuce as play. Lettuce as symbol. Lettuce as a running joke passed down for centuries. You walk slowly along the edge of the field, the sun baking your shoulders, the breeze carrying the scent of basil and loam. A donkey brays again, different donkey. Same one with attitude. Hard to say. The landscape blurs slightly, edges softening, time folding like linen in a cedar chest. This is the middle of the lettuce journey. Not the temple. Not the bedroom. The field. Where the sacred gets sweaty, and romance starts with calluses. You take one last look at the rows, green, tidy, hopeful, and feel a small tug in your chest. Something like affection. Or maybe just hydration. And as you follow the irrigation ditch back toward the road, you wonder, how many stories started right here? Two people working side by side. A handful of lettuce. A joke, a touch, a glance that lasts just a little too long. Not everything begins with a spell. Sometimes it's just a shared harvest. The fields fall behind you, replaced by a cluster of brick houses huddled under the late afternoon sun. It's quieter here, more domestic. Chickens peck in the dust, and linen flaps on lines between rooftops. You walk past doorways where women sit weaving baskets or grinding herbs with slow, circular motions. And all around you, nestled between kitchen doors and backyard fences, are garden plots, tiny, carefully tended patches of green. And yes, more lettuce. You duck into one courtyard where an elderly woman is hunched over a raised bed. Her hands move with patient precision, thinning seedlings with the tip of a bone knife. She glances at you but doesn't seem surprised. Maybe you're just another ancestor drifting by. Or maybe she's used to visitors when the veil between the waking and sleeping gets this thin. Historians agree that lettuce wasn't only for temples or rich estate gardens, it was grown in household plots, cared for by women more often than not. These were the keepers of the edible gods, the real gatekeepers of fertility. If a lettuce god smiled on anyone, it was probably someone like her, elbow deep in compost with a baby tied to her back and a head full of unspoken prayers. She gestures toward a stool beside her. You sit. She doesn't speak much, maybe she knows you won't answer, but she hums. A slow, lullaby-like tune that seems older than the bricks around her. You lean forward, watch her fingers brush soil from the roots of a just-pulled lettuce stalk. She holds it up to the sun, inspecting the color. Satisfied, she sets it in a clay bowl beside her, next to a few onions and a sprig of mint. Quirky side note, there's evidence that ancient Egyptians believed in the lettuce's ability to improve not just stamina and fertility, but also dreams. Some folk texts claim that sleeping with lettuce under your pillow could bring visions of your future partner. Romantic? Sure. A little damp? Also yes. But it explains the woven lettuce leaf pillows sold in certain marketplaces. A girl, maybe 10 years old, skips into the courtyard carrying a bundle of papyrus scrolls. She sits cross-legged near the wall and unrolls one. Her lips move silently, following the inked lines with a practiced finger. She's reading. You blink in surprise. Turns out literacy wasn't just for men in ancient Egypt. Elite women were often educated, especially in families tied to temples or bureaucracy. This girl might grow up to be a priestess. Or a scribe. Or, maybe, just someone who writes very detailed lettuce recipes. She looks up and says something to the older woman, who laughs and replies with a shake of her head. Then she pulls a small pot from behind her stool. Inside is a creamy paste, faintly green, smelling of herbs and vinegar. She dips a finger in and offers it to the girl. The child tastes it, nods thoughtfully. Salad dressing. Homemade. You've walked into the ancient Egyptian version of a cooking lesson. They begin assembling dinner together, lettuce leaves layered in a shallow dish, topped with chopped onions, crushed nuts, and what looks like crumbled goat cheese. The girl drizzles the dressing over the top with exaggerated care. The woman grins at her, proud. This is food as legacy, as love. Lettuce, not just as an offering, but as inheritance. A nearby wall bears a faded painted mural, half-cracked but still vivid. It shows a woman reclining on a mat, a man offering her a bunch of lettuce. Their eyes lock. The meaning isn't subtle. This was ancient food flirting, literal farm-to-lover pipeline. Some scholars think these domestic scenes, while romantic, were aspirational, meant to show what a well-run household should look like. Others argue it's just soft-core lettuce propaganda. You lean closer to the mural and spot a scribbled note in Demotic script near the edge. Probably added later. It reads something like, "He brought the green stalk, and I knew." You smirk. That's either a romantic haiku or the world's most poetic produce receipt. Another fringe tidbit whispers through your thoughts. Some Egyptian women reportedly made fertility charms from dried lettuce seeds, worn on strings around their waists. It was subtle, discreet, and no doubt sparked more than a few curious glances. Imagine explaining that on a first date. Back in the courtyard, the sun has dipped low, casting gold across the tiled rooftops. The woman and the girl finish eating, then begin gathering the scraps. Nothing goes to waste. The wilted bits are tossed into a clay pot to compost. Even in death, the lettuce serves. You help them tidy up, silently, invisibly. The girl hums the same tune the old woman was humming earlier. Maybe it's a family song. Maybe it's an ancient radio jingle for hot lettuce nights. Either way, it sticks in your head. As they retreat indoors, you linger, taking in the fading light, the scent of herbs still hanging in the air, the quiet echo of laughter and love. This isn't temple-grade devotion. This is daily sacredness. Lettuce as lullaby. As habit. As legacy. You rise from the stool and step through the gate, leaving the little garden behind. The world beyond is darker now, lit with oil lamps and the first glimmer of stars. But in your mind, that courtyard glows, green and soft, humming with quiet joy. And you realize something: while the gods may have taken the lettuce to their temples, its real temple was always the home. In courtyards like this one, where stories were cooked alongside dinner, and futures whispered through leaves. The night has stretched its velvet blanket across the sky, and as you walk, the oil lamps flicker to life, lighting up alleyways with warm amber pools. The city quiets, not completely, but enough to hear your own footsteps against the worn stone. Somewhere, a flute sings a lonely note, probably from a bored apprentice trying to impress a neighbor. You smile. You're heading toward the market now. Even after dark, it hums with life. Egyptians weren't early to bed types, especially not when the sun scorched all their ambition out by noon. Evening is when deals happen. When gossip swells. When the air is cooler, and people remember how to laugh again. The smell hits first: grilled fish, spiced beer, roasting onions. And yes, lettuce. Not the earthy scent of it growing, but chopped, spiced, stuffed into bread, swimming in honeyed vinegar. You wind between stalls, passing baskets piled high with the soft green heads, each leaf fanned out like a little open palm. Some are upright and firm, some floppy and already beginning to wilt. They look tired. You feel them. Vendors shout over one another in that rhythmic, practiced cadence of people who argue for sport. One man holds up a particularly tall, crisp lettuce stalk and claims, rather dramatically, that this one makes husbands into bulls. His neighbor scoffs, countering that his lettuce is strong enough to charm a goddess. You don't ask how he tested that. Mainstream history tells us that Egyptian marketplaces were more than economic hubs, they were cultural intersections. Everyone from priests to peasants came here, rubbing elbows and trading not just goods but news, rumors, and the occasional flirty insult. Lettuce, you notice, had a place in all of this. Not tucked away in apothecaries or temples, but front and center, out where people lived. One fringe theory, only whispered in certain quarters, suggests that lettuce was sometimes used as a form of non-verbal communication. A well-placed stalk in your basket could signal, interested. A wilted one might mean, not tonight. A pair of stalks. Well, now that's a proposition. No one agrees if this is true or wishful thinking. Historians still argue whether produce-based flirting was real or just poetic license run wild. You stop at a table where a woman sells perfumed oils. Next to the usual lotus and myrrh bottles, there's a strange little vial, greenish gold, faintly glistening in the lamplight. You ask about it. She grins and leans in, whispering, lettuce essence. Supposedly, it's for enhancing private vigor, and was used by dancers, lovers, and the particularly anxious before big dates. You pretend to consider buying it but decide you're already feeling pretty virile. Nearby, a man is carving lettuce shapes into clay tokens. Children gather around, giggling as he fashions a phallic lettuce tower complete with overly dramatic leaves. This one's for the Temple of Min, he bellows. It's not subtle. But it's effective. A woman drops a coin in his cup and requests one shaped like a wedding bouquet. He nods solemnly. There's a market for everything. You lean against a column, watching the ebb and flow of the crowd. Couples walk hand in hand. A young man hides a lettuce stalk behind his back, then pulls it out with a flourish, offering it to a blushing girl. It's both absurd and kind of beautiful. Romance here isn't candlelight and violins, it's awkward laughter and shared snacks. Lettuce was democratic. That's the thing. Sacred, yes, but also everywhere. In the temple, in the bedroom, in the lunch sack of the guy who cleaned crocodile pits. Egyptians lived with it, joked about it, dreamed about it. You realize that for all its symbolism, maybe what made lettuce romantic was just how common it was. Romance isn't rare, it's repeated. Over and over, in small, leafy gestures. A musician nearby strums a lyre and sings in a lilting dialect. The lyrics are half familiar, something about gardens, hearts, open palms, and promises carried on the wind. You don't catch every word, but the mood settles over you like mist. A few people dance, slow and soft, hips swaying just enough to make the beads at their waists clack like wind chimes. Someone passes by selling skewers of grilled vegetables. One of them is wrapped in a lettuce leaf and dusted with what smells like cumin and crushed coriander. You take one, bite in. It's messy. It drips. It's perfect. A man nearby starts telling a story, a tall tale, clearly. About a priest who fell in love with a dancer and tried to win her heart with an enchanted lettuce field. The crops grew faster the more he pined, until finally the whole temple was overrun and the gods had to intervene. A crocodile was involved somehow. And bees. The crowd laughs. The moral? Don't underestimate lettuce. Or women. Fair. You slip through the market, past stalls selling charms, past fortune tellers with eyes like storm clouds. One beckons you. You hesitate. She doesn't ask your name, just places a single lettuce leaf in your palm. For growth, she says. Or for letting go. You nod. She knows something, maybe. Or maybe she just knows how to end a conversation. Your feet are tired. The market is thinning out. But even as people pack up, someone's carving more lettuce tokens. Someone's singing softly. Someone's still flirting with a vegetable. You take one last look around, and it hits you again, the strange power of this humble green. It's not about what it is. It's about what people say it is. Fertile. Fresh. Romantic. Ridiculous. Powerful. Delicious. A symbol of life. A prop in jokes. A stand-in for longing. And as you slip away from the light, the music, the smells, and the lettuce sellers with their wild claims and cheeky grins, you can't help but think, if love were a vegetable, this would be it. The market hum fades behind you, but that faint scent of grilled herbs and spiced lettuce still clings to the air like perfume in a lover's scarf. The streets quiet more with each step, and your sandals scuff softly along the limestone paths as you pass shuttered doors and sleeping dogs. You turn down a narrower street now, quieter, older, more private. Here, the walls are taller, the gardens more hidden. You're approaching the homes of scribes, priests, and those who dabble in the serious business of interpreting gods and dreams. In other words, the ancient equivalent of the intellectual class. And tonight, you're about to sneak into one of their private gatherings. No invitation required, dreams, after all, don't knock. The courtyard is lit with lanterns swinging gently in the breeze. A handful of people recline on cushioned mats, sipping from shallow cups. They're talking about lettuce. Yes. Again. But not in the temple sense. Not the romantic market banter. This is scholarly lettuce. Academic lettuce. Lettuce with theories and scroll citations. You drift closer. One man, wearing a finely pleated linen kilt and enough eyeliner to make a raccoon jealous, leans forward. But what if, he says, Min's association with lettuce wasn't about the shape at all, but its sap? Murmurs rise. He continues, white, milky, sticky. You see where I'm going. You do. Everyone does. It's ancient Egypt's most persistent scholarly rumor, that the plant's reputation as a fertility symbol wasn't just because it looked a little vertical, but because it leaked. Yes, you're now listening to a 3,000-year-old version of a TED Talk about lettuce juice and masculinity. You're welcome. A woman across from him rolls her eyes. That's simplistic. The symbolism was multi-layered. Ritual. Agricultural. Psychological. And anyway, not all lettuce varieties produce sap. Some say it's the bitterness that matters, transformation from bitter to sweet over time. Like desire. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians truly saw lettuce sap as divine essence or if that's modern overinterpretation. But the ancient texts don't exactly help, they're poetic, elusive, and wildly inconsistent. One hymn might call lettuce the staff of virility, and another describes it as the soft hand that opens the heart. Pick a metaphor. Spin a theory. Everyone's right, and no one is. You lie back on a low wall, staring up at the stars. The scholarly banter continues, floating through the courtyard like incense. Someone brings up the Dream Book, a popular Egyptian text listing dream symbols and meanings. Lettuce dreams, according to one version, suggest upcoming pleasure. Or illness. Or pregnancy. Or all three. Because nothing says restful sleep like decoding your subconscious over breakfast. A slightly drunk scribe unrolls a papyrus scroll and begins reciting what sounds like lettuce-based poetry. "O green delight, you raise my will slash your crisp embrace, my heart does fill, it's deeply earnest. And a little uncomfortable." Another guest snorts into their beer. And here's the thing, it's easy to laugh at all this. Lettuce. The humble salad base. Romantic hero of a civilization. But lying there under the stars, listening to these intelligent, half-drunk voices debating whether a vegetable holds the key to eternity, it makes a strange kind of sense. Because ancient Egyptians didn't divide their world into the sacred and the silly the way we often do. To them, lettuce could be a food, a medicine, a metaphor, a God's gift, and a bedroom aid all at once. Nothing had to fit in just one box. It was layered. Like, yes, you guessed it, a head of lettuce. There's a theory, fringe, of course, that the shape of the lettuce was deliberately cultivated over centuries to mimic masculine strength. That gardeners, working from temple guidance, bred taller, more erect stalks to honor Min. Is that true? Well, we do know that Egyptians were expert horticulturists. And religious symbolism definitely influenced farming. But whether they were selectively breeding for virility? Historians shrug and reach for more wine. Another guest, clearly the type who takes their role as serious thinker a bit too seriously, launches into a monologue about duality. Lettuce contains contradictions, he says. It is both nourishing and purgative. Bitter and sweet. Sacred and profane. It is, in many ways, the vegetable embodiment of human desire. He finishes this with a sip of wine and a satisfied sigh, like he just solved metaphysics with a salad. You're about to drift off right there on the stone wall when someone drops a scroll in your lap. You blink down at it, it's illustrated, crudely but colorfully, showing a man offering a lettuce stalk to a reclining woman. Below the image, a line reads, "He brought green, I gave bloom." And just like that, you're wide awake again. Turns out, there was a whole subgenre of romantic verse dedicated to vegetable-based courtship. It never made it into high temple archives, of course, too saucy, but it lived in the margins. On personal scrolls. Graffiti walls. Carved into pottery. This wasn't the literature of scribes. It was the language of lovers. And now, lying back under the stars while someone plays a soft tune on a double pipe, you realize just how embedded this humble green really was in every layer of Egyptian thought. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't even just a symbol. It was a bridge, a way to connect the body to the divine, the field to the bed, the myth to the meal. The gathering starts to break up. People shuffle home with scrolls under arms and cheeks warm with wine. One couple lingers, walking hand in hand, the man twirling a single lettuce leaf between his fingers like a flower. You hear her laugh as they vanish around the corner. And you smile too. Because by now, you understand. Lettuce isn't just a food, or a symbol, or an ancient punchline. It's a love letter in chlorophyll. A sacred wink. A reminder that romance doesn't need violins, it can bloom in the garden, under the stars, or between bites of something bitter that turns sweet. The morning light slips slowly through your window, soft as a whisper, and the world outside is just waking up, stretching like a cat before its first hunt. But here you are, still tangled in the sheets, mind wandering back to those moonlit conversations and the many faces of lettuce in ancient Egypt. You decide to follow the trail to the temple gardens, those mysterious places where the sacred and the everyday merged in tangled vines and fragrant blooms. Temple gardens weren't just pretty courtyards, they were living laboratories, prayer spaces, and sometimes, romance incubators. Here, priests tended plants with the same devotion they gave to ritual, nurturing each sprout as if it held the breath of the gods themselves. Walking through the garden gate, you inhale deeply. The scent of mint mingles with the sharp bite of onions and, yes, the unmistakable green crispness of lettuce. The beds are laid out in neat rows, but there's a wildness too, flowers creeping over the edges, bees humming lazily from blossom to blossom. The air feels cool and sacred, like it holds secrets whispered by centuries. You spot a priestess nearby, carefully trimming a particularly robust lettuce plant. Her hands move with practiced grace, but there's a softness in her eyes, as if this green stalk means more than just food. You wonder if she's thinking about love or ritual, or maybe both. Historically, temple gardens were critical for supplying fresh herbs and vegetables for offerings to the gods. Lettuce had a starring role here, often symbolizing regeneration and fertility. Some temples even held festivals dedicated to Min, where lettuce was a featured offering. The rituals were elaborate, blending the practical and the mystical, a dance of water, earth, and human devotion. One quirky detail you catch is that lettuce was sometimes left to wilt slightly before being offered, symbolizing the transition from life to death and back again. It's as if the plant's cycle mirrored human passion, fresh excitement fading into tender longing, then blooming anew. Scholars still debate whether this practice was purely symbolic or held secret meanings lost to time. As you stroll deeper into the garden, you pass a basin filled with water and floating lettuce leaves. It's a simple image but striking, a green sea shimmering under the sun. Some believe that priests used these leaves in love spells or healing rituals, rubbing them onto the body or brewing them into teas. You can almost imagine the cool sap trickling down the skin, mingling with whispered prayers. Nearby, a young novice practices incantations, holding a lettuce stalk like a scepter. His voice wavers, but he seems determined to harness the plant's reputed powers. You overhear a senior priest reminding him, "Remember, the lettuce teaches us humility and desire, it is a path to balance, not just passion." This duality fascinates you, lettuce as both a symbol of raw vitality and quiet restraint. It's not just about carnal energy but about harmony between body and spirit. Maybe that's why it was so deeply woven into love rituals. Maybe love itself was seen as a dance between those forces. You find a shaded bench and sit, letting the warmth seep into your bones. Around you, the garden hums with life, the soft buzz of insects, the distant murmur of water, the rustle of leaves. You close your eyes for a moment, imagining what it must have been like to live surrounded by such potent symbols, to believe that a simple leaf could hold the power of gods and hearts. And just as you drift, a breeze stirs the lettuce plants, making their leaves whisper against each other. It feels like a secret, a gentle reminder that love, in all its forms, is both fragile and fierce, ever growing, ever changing. The day has worn on, and now you find yourself reclining beside the Nile, the great river that cradled Egyptian civilization like a gentle giant. The water gleams under the sun, reflecting the sky's endless blue, and nearby, papyrus reeds sway softly, tickling the air with their whispers. You're drawn to this place, not just for its beauty, but because the Nile is more than a river, it's a living artery of life, love, and legend. Here, on the banks, you spot fishermen hauling in their nets and women washing clothes, their laughter ringing out like bells. Children splash in the shallows, and someone sells freshly cut lettuce wrapped in palm leaves to passing traders. The everyday mingles effortlessly with the mythic. The connection between lettuce and the Nile is deeper than you might expect. Ancient Egyptians believed the river itself blessed the land, making it fertile and alive. Lettuce, as a crop, thrived in the Nile's rich soil, becoming a symbol of abundance and renewal. Some even say the Egyptians first discovered lettuce growing wild along the riverbanks. You watch a couple seated on a low wall, sharing a simple meal of bread and lettuce, their hands brushing occasionally. It's quiet, tender, the kind of moment that feels like a small rebellion against the world's harshness. Lettuce here is more than food, it's comfort, connection, a green thread weaving people together. One fringe idea you overhear from a traveling storyteller involves the lettuce dance, a ritual said to have taken place near the river during fertility festivals. According to legend, dancers would sway, waving lettuce leaves above their heads, mimicking the flow of the Nile and invoking blessings of love and prosperity. There's no concrete evidence this ever happened, but it's a beautiful image, the river and the plant moving in harmony, celebrating life's cycles. Historians still argue whether such dances were widespread or just localized customs, and if lettuce really held such an active role in festivals beyond symbolic offerings. The lack of direct records leaves much to imagination. A nearby old man, his face a map of wrinkles and smiles, tells you that the Nile's gift was more than just water, it was a promise. Lettuce grows where the river flows, but it's the heart that feeds the soul, he says, eyes twinkling. You nod, feeling the weight of those words settle softly inside you. As you watch the river's gentle current, you recall that lettuce was sometimes used medicinally, to soothe the mind and calm nerves. The milky sap, remember? Egyptians brewed it into teas to ease pain or induce sleep. It was nature's lullaby. You lean back, letting the sun warm your face, and the sound of the river becomes a soothing backdrop to your thoughts. The river and lettuce, two ancient symbols of life, growth, and love, both humble and profound. And as your eyelids flutter, the river's slow song mingles with the rustle of lettuce leaves nearby, inviting you to dream of green fields and flowing waters, of whispered promises and the quiet strength of nature's tender embrace. Evening creeps in like a gentle sigh, wrapping the city in soft shadows and golden light. You wander through the bustling streets again, now quieter, the daytime frenzy softened to a lazy murmur. Your feet carry you toward a humble tavern tucked between sun-warmed mud brick walls. Inside, the smell of roasted grains and spiced beer mingles with the faint, unmistakable aroma of lettuce, a curious reminder of your ever-growing obsession. You find a quiet corner and settle onto a woven mat, watching the world through half-lidded eyes. Around you, patrons chat about their days, trade gossip, and exchange jokes, some ancient, some likely older than the lettuce itself. A musician strums a lute, the notes trailing like smoke, wrapping around the room in a cozy blanket. Your thoughts drift to the role lettuce played in ancient Egyptian medicine and magic. Beyond its romantic symbolism, it was prized for practical uses, a mild sedative, a digestive aid, and a balm for wounds. Some priests and healers believed lettuce could calm the heart and quiet restless spirits, a natural remedy for sleepless nights and anxious minds. There's a quirky tidbit you recall, some ancient Egyptian medical papyri recommend applying lettuce juice to battle scars and even crocodile bites. You imagine that, lettuce as a first responder in the wild Nile Delta, soothing wounds that, frankly, sound like nightmares. Historians still argue whether lettuce's medicinal reputation was based on actual healing properties or mainly symbolic faith. Modern science suggests some lettuce varieties contain lacticarium, a mild sedative compound, but nothing quite as dramatic as the myths suggest. A tavern keeper overhears your musings and smiles knowingly. Lettuce is good for more than salad, he says, pouring a cup of herbal tea infused with crushed lettuce leaves. Try this, it helps with restless nights. You take a sip, the bittergreen warmth spreading through you like a gentle hug. Nearby, a couple laughs softly, sharing a lettuce-wrapped snack, their fingers brushing now and then. It strikes you again how lettuce, in all its humble glory, has long been woven into the fabric of love and daily life. From royal banquets to tavern snacks, from sacred temples to moonlit gardens, it remains a quiet witness to human connection. You lean back, the music humming in your ears, the taste of tea lingering on your tongue. Outside, the night deepens, stars pricking the sky like tiny lanterns. The world feels peaceful, wrapped in layers of history and gentle mystery. And somewhere between the shadows and the soft lute music, you realize lettuce isn't just a plant. It's a story. A secret language spoken in leaves and sap, in the rustle of markets and the whispers of lovers. It's an ancient pulse beating quietly beneath the surface of everything. Night deepens further as you step outside, the tavern's warm glow retreating behind you like a comforting ember fading into dusk. The cool desert air brushes against your skin, carrying whispers of sand and the faint, lingering scent of lettuce, a reminder that this journey through time and leaf isn't quite finished. You find yourself wandering toward the river again, drawn to the shimmer of the Nile under a silver moon. The water's surface ripples softly, mirroring stars that seem to wink with ancient knowing. You settle on the bank, legs dangling over the edge, and pull a small bundle from your satchel. Yes, you packed some lettuce, old habits die hard. As you nibble the crisp leaves, you think about how lettuce was featured in Egyptian love magic, potions, charms, and even tattoos. Some lovers supposedly wore small lettuce leaf amulets, believing they would inspire passion or fidelity in their partners. The idea that such a humble plant could wield such influence feels charmingly quaint, yet undeniably powerful. One unusual legend speaks of lettuce being used in dream magic. People placed leaves beneath their pillows to attract romantic dreams or to reveal their true feelings during sleep. Historians still argue whether these practices were widespread or limited to specific regions and social classes, but the persistence of such tales hints at something deeply human, our desire to understand love's mysteries, even in dreams. You close your eyes, imagining the Egyptians drifting into sleep with lettuce leaves tucked beneath their heads, hoping to catch glimpses of future lovers or rekindle fading flames. The thought makes you smile. Romance, after all, is a universal language, spoken softly in the quiet moments before dawn. Suddenly, you recall an odd but fascinating detail. Some Egyptians believed that the god Min's presence was strongest in lettuce fields at dawn. Farmers would greet the first light by offering lettuce stalks to ensure fertility and protection. This ritual connected daily labor to divine favor, blurring the lines between work, worship, and desire. You trace a finger along the smooth edge of a lettuce leaf, feeling the veins like tiny rivers. It's a simple, tangible connection to a world long past, yet intimately familiar. In that moment, you realize lettuce was more than a romantic symbol, it was a living metaphor for life's cycles, growth, decay, and renewal. The river murmurs beside you, the night deep and full of possibilities. You tuck the last bite of lettuce into your mouth, savoring the crisp freshness and the ancient stories it carries. Somewhere between the river's flow and the moon's gentle glow, you sense the heartbeat of an eternal love story, whispered through leaves, dreams, and time. The night sky deepens to velvet as you rise from the riverbank, the cool air wrapped around you like a soft shawl. Your footsteps lead you back through the sleepy city streets, where flickering oil lamps cast golden pools of light on the cracked mud brick walls. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks, a reminder that life, no matter how ancient, never truly sleeps. Your mind wanders back to the intricacies of Egyptian love rituals, especially those involving lettuce. Beyond the garden beds and temple offerings, lettuce appeared in poetry and art, often as a symbol of desire and fertility. Lovers carved its likeness into jewelry or wove it into garlands, hoping to capture the plant's supposed powers. One amusing bit you recall is that lettuce was sometimes nicknamed the plant of love, but also the plant of drunkenness, thanks to its mild sedative effects. It was said that eating too much could leave you drowsy or even a bit tipsy, an ancient green cocktail, if you will. You imagine a royal banquet where guests giggled over lettuce appetizers, their eyelids heavy and smiles wide. Historians still argue whether lettuce was genuinely used recreationally or if these stories are playful exaggerations by later writers. The evidence is scattered and fragmentary, leaving a tantalizing mystery hanging in the air like incense smoke. Passing a small shrine, you pause to watch a woman lighting incense, her eyes closed in silent prayer. In her hands, a bundle of lettuce leaves, tied with a crimson ribbon. You wonder if she's invoking Min, Hathor, or simply hoping for a little extra luck in love. The symbolism runs deep, lettuce as a bridge between the mortal and divine, the physical and spiritual realms. It's an emblem of vitality and restraint, a reminder that love is both a flame and a garden needing careful tending. As you continue your stroll, the soft crunch of your sandals on the sandy path syncs with your heartbeat, steady and calm. The night is full of subtle sounds, the rustle of leaves, a distant owl's call, the soft murmur of the city settling into sleep. These quiet moments, wrapped in history and myth, feel like a gentle lullaby. You pause under a fig tree, the leaves casting delicate shadows over your face. The world feels suspended between past and present, a timeless dance where even something as simple as lettuce carries the weight of stories and desires. You breathe in the night air, letting its coolness seep into your skin, and for a moment, the mysteries of love and lettuce feel just a little closer, whispered secrets cradled in green leaves and moonlight. The early morning light seeps softly through your window, and you awaken feeling the gentle tug of history still lingering in your dreams. You stretch, sensing that your journey through time is nearing its quiet conclusion, but not before one last thought settles warmly in your mind. You find yourself drawn again to the marketplaces of ancient Egypt, where life teems in a kaleidoscope of sights, sounds, and smells. Vendors shout their wares, children dart between stalls, and the rich scent of spices swirls around piles of fresh produce, lettuce prominently displayed among them. Here, lettuce was both a staple and a luxury, consumed by peasants and pharaohs alike. It was eaten raw, cooked, and even fermented, showing its versatile role in Egyptian cuisine. You imagine the crunch of fresh leaves in a bustling street market, the sharp contrast to the sweet, honeyed bread sold nearby. One quirky custom you stumble upon is that lettuce was sometimes used in love letters, pressed leaves tucked between papyrus scrolls, symbolizing a message of affection and hope. It's a tender gesture, and you imagine young lovers shyly exchanging these fragrant tokens, their hearts pounding as they await a reply. Historians still argue about how common this practice was and whether it carried specific coded meanings, but it's a lovely image, lettuce as a messenger of the heart, bridging distance and doubt. You pause to watch a merchant wrapping a bundle of lettuce with palm fronds, preparing it for delivery to a noble household. The care taken in this simple act reminds you that even the humblest leaf can carry great significance. The market's energy pulses around you, a living testament to the rhythms of daily life and love. Lettuce here is not just food, it's a symbol, a ritual, a language spoken in green whispers. As the sun climbs higher, the marketplace swells with life, and you feel the pull of the present mingling with echoes of the past. The stories you've gathered, the myths and mysteries, the quiet power of lettuce, each thread weaving together into a tapestry both ancient and immediate. And as you step away, the scent of fresh lettuce lingers in the air, a soft reminder that love and life grow best when nurtured with care, patience, and a little bit of green magic. The day is fading again, and you find yourself in a quiet garden, tucked away from the bustle of the city. The sun sets in slow, fiery strokes, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. You sit on a low stone bench, surrounded by the scent of blooming lotus and, of course, that unmistakable crispness of fresh lettuce leaves nearby. This garden feels like a secret sanctuary, a place where the stories of lettuce and love converge into a serene, living memory. You trace your fingers over the veins of a leaf, feeling the delicate strength within. Here, lettuce embodies not just romance, but the cycles of life, birth, growth, decay, and renewal. You remember the layers of meaning you've uncovered, the mythic connections to Min and Hathor, the medicinal uses that soothe bodies and spirits, the poetic symbolism woven through art and ritual, and the tender tales of lovers who used lettuce as a secret language. One last quirky notion crosses your mind, that lettuce was believed to be an aphrodisiac but also a plant that could temper desire, a paradox that fits perfectly with the complex dance of human love. Maybe that's why it held such a special place in Egyptian hearts, a reminder that love is both wild and gentle, fierce and calm. Historians still argue about how much of this is myth and how much reflects actual practice, but perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, in the whispered stories passed from one generation to the next, carried on the wind like leaves on the Nile. As night fully settles, the garden darkens and the stars begin their silent vigil. You lean back, the cool stone grounding you, and listen to the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. It's a lullaby centuries old, sung by the earth itself. You feel a calm wash over you, a quiet connection to a time and place where something as simple as lettuce could hold the mysteries of the heart and the promise of love. And with that soothing thought, you close your eyes, the stories folding gently into dreams. Now, as promised, here's the gentle wind down to close the journey. The night has deepened, and you find yourself drifting slowly toward rest. The layers of history and myth, once vivid and sharp, now soften into a hazy tapestry, a gentle embrace to cradle your thoughts. Imagine the quiet rustling of lettuce leaves in a warm garden, the cool touch of river water on sun-warmed skin, the faint murmur of distant voices sharing secrets long ago. You don't have to understand everything, and that's perfectly okay. The beauty lies in the mystery, the way love and life intertwine through simple, ordinary things like leaves, rivers, and whispered legends. Let your mind float on the soft current of these stories, letting them carry you gently into sleep. Feel your breathing slow, your muscles relax, and the world's weight slip quietly away. Tonight, as you rest, know that you're part of an ancient story, one as old as time, told in green whispers and moonlight. Sweet dreams.